This is Meet the Candidates on Brattleboro Community Television. I'm Chris Lenois, and today we are visiting with David Schoales. He is an independent candidate running for state senate here in Windham County. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, I wanted to ask you right away about that independent status. It's a hard proposition running against incumbents in any race here in Vermont, but running without a party status. Why did you make that choice?
Well, I've never been active in either of the major parties, so it didn't make sense to run in the primaries because I didn't know those people, I hadn't worked with those people, and for the most part, they didn't know me. A lot of my work has been independent or on the Selectboard or the school board where there's no partisanship. And I also think that one of the problems that we've got in Vermont is that the parties kind of dictate a lot of what happens in the State House. It's a busy place, and legislators can't get all the information that they need sometimes to make decisions, so they rely on each other. And I think that that's been become a little bit more prominent than is healthy. I think it's important for more independent voices to be there and to kind of push back against the party rule.
Yeah, well, you talk about more independent voices. I believe you'd be the only independent voice in the Senate. I think everybody else is either a Republican, Democrat, or progressive candidate here. And so, especially in a smaller body like the Senate, where coalitions get built, where would you think that you would, or how would you try and build support for things that you would want to push?
Well, I think on the basis of the rightness of them. I think the thing that I'm most interested in is making the state's efforts to help people get out of poverty a lot more effective, a lot more efficient, a lot better coordinated. And there are plenty of people in the State House, people that I know and people that I'm sure I'll meet, who are very much in line with that. There's a statewide study being done right now. Paul Costello is one of the people on that panel. And they're coming up with some of the same things that I've been talking about for years around here, and it's been a major part of my campaign, to try and get rid of the duplication, try and get rid of all the forms that you have to fill out, try and make it so that services can be wrapped around families in poverty so that they can actually get out of poverty instead of just getting 10 hours of preschool or meals. Obviously those things are important, but it doesn't get you out of poverty, it just gets you a meal. It's like I think it's a biblical adage about give a person a fish, they eat for a day. You teach them how to fish, they can eat forever.
Yeah. So I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but when you're thinking about being that independent, it sounds to me like you're feeling like that frees you up to move towards ideas that you like. Regardless of where it's coming from, versus an agenda. I mean, I think some independents get in there and they don't like necessarily what the Republicans offer, the Democrats offer, and so that's why they become an independent. It doesn't sound to me like that's your motivation.
No, not at all. It's simply that I'm not aligned with the party, and I think that we need some fresh voices. I think we need perspectives, people that are going to come back into the community and listen to the people that are on the ground doing the work. I think that's another issue. The leadership in most of the state agencies, they talk to each other. They don't really get out. They'll send down directions to the worker bees, as was mentioned in a Digger article about that commission that's looking into the efficiency. And they say the worker bees sometimes don't get the message, but I think it's the other flow, the other direction of the information flow that's way more important. They're not getting information from people here who have these options, who have these 40-question forms that people have to fill out to qualify for services. And then they have to go to the next agency and do a very similar process. And it seems like, well, not to get too many details, but it seems like if somebody qualifies for welfare, it shouldn't be much of a question about whether they could get vocational rehabilitation or whether they could get reduced rate at community college, or whether they could qualify for free childcare or for subsidies so that high school kids can take college classes.
Yeah. Curious too as to your choice of running for Senate versus state representative. Is there a reason that you chose that?
The primary reason is that during the Act 46 process, I contacted all my legislators, and I went when the bill was in the Senate toward the end of the session. I was in Montpelier. I'm on the School Board Association board as well. So the second Wednesday of every month, I go to Montpelier during the session, and in the daytime, I go to the legislature and sit in on committees. And I emailed and called Rebecca and Jeanette and asked to meet with them in the cafeteria sometime during that Wednesday. And Becca responded. She came and looked at some of the data I had about the impact that 46 was going to have, particularly on on schools that have a lot of poverty. And I sent a couple of the pages, take these little notes around from to the legislators, and I sent the pages twice to Jeanette so just a reminder, I'm in the cafeteria. I'd like to talk to you about 46, and she didn't come. And I didn't get many responses to emails. I get responses from legislators who aren't even in my district on issues, or that I'm not in their district on issues. I get no response from Jeanette, and it just felt to me that there had to be a political price to pay for that. And I'm not sure, one of the things you haven't mentioned yet about being an independent is it's hard to get elected, and even harder against an incumbent. And I may not be able to pull that off, although I'm working very hard to do it. But at least she's going to have to work really hard to keep her seat.
Yeah.
It's not going to just fall in her lap.
Yeah. Want to get your sense on how you're feeling about who you can work with in the leadership in the State House here, obviously, being that independent status, ideas that are being bandied about in the gubernatorial race between Sue Minter, Phil Scott, even Bill Lee. Is there somebody there that you're finding that you're agreeing more with in terms of what their platform is?
Well, I haven't seen a lot of specifics from Phil Scott. I mean, he talks generally about a lot of issues, but he's very hard to pin down. I think Sue Minter seems to have an openness to being flexible about implementing Act 46, about possibly having a one-year pause to push the deadlines back so that districts have time to really figure out what's going to be the best thing for kids, not necessarily what's going to be the best thing to get the tax incentive. And so I think, although she hasn't been really specific about it either, she seems more open to those conversations. So I'm fairly hopeful about that. I haven't talked to Bill Lee, so I can't say for sure, but he always struck me as a pretty open thinker. Yeah.
Well, and obviously the main goal, your main charge when you go up there is spending. The budget every year. So in terms of some of the things that the two major party candidates, let's just stick with their plans for a second here. When you hear Phil Scott talking about finding efficiencies, and he hasn't been specific about that, but finding efficiencies, tying the budget to revenue growth, your thoughts on that sort of approach?
Well, it depends on where we get the revenue. If we took the school funding out of the property tax and put it into the income tax, that would free up a whole bunch of revenue for local communities, so that the changes in the income tax a lot of it would be made up. I think you can't just look at revenues, you have to look at what's needed. And the state, several years ago, the legislature and the governor committed to creating a service-based budget. Here are all the things that we say we're going to do. Here are all the promises that we made. Here's how much it's going to cost. And up until this year, I think this is the first year that happened, and it was because of pressure from a religious-based group that was really pushing for that human services-related based budget. And when you look at the things you need to have, then you have to look at where the money can come from. I think that Phil Scott is right, and I can't imagine there's a candidate running anywhere in the state that wouldn't say that they have to look for efficiencies. But there are things like we've seen in Brattleboro, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we save on streetlights by changing out the bulbs. The audits that we just had on all the town buildings, and looking at the savings that we're going to see over time from that. The revenue that's going to come from the Waste Management District, solar array, all those things are sources of revenue that also save money. And so, I mean, you're not going to balance a budget based on energy costs. But the cheapest energy is the energy you don't buy because you don't need it, because you've conserved and you've upgraded your facilities, and the state's full of facilities that can be upgraded. At the same time, those provide jobs for local people who then spend in the community, and that generates revenue in itself. So but I think in terms of efficiencies, that to me, the efficiency of the human service, the agency of education, the labor department, any organization that's working in social services, or working with, like, corrections is another example. Adult basic ed, all the different things that are involved in helping people. If they were more effective, if they were more coordinated, if they were more wrapped around families, as opposed to each organization doing their part, their section that their charter or their budget outlines, there would be efficiencies.
Yeah, well, you talked about, depends on where the revenue comes from. One of the ideas that Sue Minter has floated out there is going back to some of the suggestions and recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission that were made in 2011, including perhaps service-based sales taxes. Your thoughts on that as an approach?
It's hard. I mean, I understand the reasoning. It's a service. It's something that people go out and buy and pay for. It's before looking at that kind of a tax, because it's not in any way progressive. It's based on if you need a lot of services, if you're a sick person or you have health issues, or if you need psychological support, if you need chiropractic help, you're going to pay more for it if there's a tax on the services. And it seems to me if we need to raise revenue, you need to go where the money is. It's like the bank robber guy said, I robbed the bank, so that's where the money is. The money is in the higher income people, and that's where the revenue should come from. That's the fair way to do it. And they also are people that have a lot of power, so it's difficult to get that in legislation. There is a fair argument to be made that the state has a high income tax already, and that discourages people from moving in and making investments. But I don't think it's as discouraging as a high property tax. And along the border here, it's not as discouraging as a high sales tax, which limits the town's ability to raise funds.
Yeah. We know that very well in one of
clearly.
these border towns, don't we?
And we tried several times to pass that local options tax, and it's just not possible.
Yeah. I want to ask you about some of the issues you address on your website, daveforvtsenate.com. That's your Facebook page as well. You have campaign literature out there. But right at the top of your website, greatest threat to our future is poverty exacerbated by opioid abuse. And you call for research-based solutions to the opioid epidemic. We're still not too far removed from when Governor Shumlin made opioid abuse the state of the state focus, and the approach he's taken to make it more of a health issue and a treatment issue than a law enforcement issue. Are you seeing, in terms of what you're proposing when you're talking about research-based, something missing from the direction that he's taken?
No, I don't know how effectively it's been implemented. If there's more than announcing it that has happened. Frankly, I'm not really. If there's more information about that, I don't have it yet. But what I'm talking about there is that it is, if you treat an addiction as if it's a crime, then the person goes to jail and then they come out and they get re-addicted. If you treat it as a more of a medical condition, or I'm not sure exactly what the right word would be for that, but if they're getting therapeutic help, if they're getting follow-up, if again they're getting services that they need, not just to spend a couple of weeks or a couple of months in rehab and come out and not start over again. When they come out, they need a decent place to live. They need something to look forward to. People don't do this just because they want to get higher. They want to feel different. They do it because they don't have any hope in their life. They don't see a way forward. And it's so easy to get now because of the medication issue. That's really what's led to the explosion. It's not like all of a sudden the heroin dealers have become more efficient or have a chamber of commerce for smack dealers.
Let's hope we don't get to that point.
And it has nothing to do with, you'll probably get to this later on, but it has nothing to do with the availability of marijuana either. It has to do with the availability of the opioids, of those pills. And now apparently, and again, I just recently skimmed a report about the medication that they give to keep people from taking opioids, and apparently that can be divided up and used just to get high as well, and go even further than the doses that are supplied to the person that's a former addict.
Right, but as far as like some of the ways that we've already started doing treatment issues, the hub and spoke model, patient-centered medical homes, I didn't know if you were seeing something in there that you felt was the wrong approach.
No, I don't. I think if it's going to be a therapeutic approach, if it's going to be based around the medical system, then it should be incorporated into the other changes that need to happen. I don't know if you're familiar with the Blueprint for Health.
That's the name for patient-centered medical homes here in Vermont.
Yeah, okay, great. And the way that they coordinate services, the way they send people to the farmer's market.
Right.
We give them coupons so they can send people over to the farmer's market. And they really provide the services, support services for the families, not just for the addiction. And I think the other thing that at some point in the near future we're going to have to do, because of the cost of health care, is to create a system of universal primary care. So everybody in the state has a primary care physician. I think the bill that the project the governor's working on right now, and the Green Mountain Care Board is working on right now, the Affordable Care Organization, it can help. It definitely can help, but it's not going to draw more people into primary care, and it's not going to provide the resources that we need. The Northeast Kingdom they have to double the number of primary care physicians they have. And if there's not somebody that's meeting, talking with somebody, seeing them regularly, someone from the facility or from the staff is following up to make sure they're making progress, we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. But when you bring up the Blueprint for Health, and when you're on your website are talking about greater coordination of agencies and resources, right, are you talking about an extra layer over something like the Blueprint for Health, or are you talking about just working that model
Well, the
better?
Blueprint for Health works for the people that are referred to them by physicians. If you're not referred by a physician to them, they don't work for you. It's more like if somebody comes in, if somebody is an addict or somebody is a parent with a couple of kids and no income, and the kids are hungry and they don't have stable place to live, and they come in for social services, they should be referred to the Blueprint for Health for that component of their needs. So it would, in a sense, it might be an additional layer. I think what it's going to be is more of a coordinator service. And given the technology that we have now, it seems almost inconceivable that we don't already have that there isn't some place that you go if you're in need, some place that you go and they send an email over to the WIC people, or maybe not even that. Maybe there's an algorithm that just goes click and you get a WIC card, or whatever other services that you need. It shouldn't require going in and out of all those offices. And if people are actually spending their time, people in the human services enterprise are spending their time with families, with people, rather than sitting down and filling out a 40-question form in every office in the community, that's more efficient immediately.
Yeah, and you're talking about these treatment services for people who are opioid abusers. You just brought up the Universal Primary Care program, which is something else you mentioned on your website. But you also talk about how the costs of poverty have led to high taxes that make Vermont unaffordable. All these programs that you're talking about are either increases on programs or new programs. Are there other programs in the budget that you see that you would think could be cut?
I don't know so much about cut as reorganized and then maybe not require so many resources. But right now, the situation is so intense and the services are extensive in the state. And we're not making a lot of progress against poverty. Every year, more kids come into kindergarten that are not, and a larger number each year come into kindergarten who are not ready for school. Some of them can't toilet themselves. You need two adults to go to the bathroom with that kid. Some kids have never had to follow direction. They've never sat still for any length of time. They've never even necessarily had a conversation other than somebody yelling at them. And I mean, those are the extreme cases, but there's a whole spectrum of other needs that kids come into school with because they come from poverty. If you look at the criminal justice system, the additional costs these are the results of poverty, people becoming addicted to opium, or pretty much to anything, are people stealing for their drugs, people having no future, no hope of a job, no kind of reasonable training, not successful in school, not successful at the career center, not successful pretty much anywhere along the way, and nobody in their family has been successful. They don't have a model for getting up and going to work every day. They don't have a model or a sense of the importance of working, of the self-respect that you get from having a job and providing for your family. It's not in their background, and that all has to change. And that's not going to happen by reducing or expanding the number of these programs. It's going to have to take a really concerted and really coordinated effort to work with families to get them all moving in the right direction. You can't just take care of the kids and say that'll do it. Yeah,
I wanted to bring up just viewers out there watching, if they didn't know, you're a member of the select board and a member of the school board here in town, so you are seeing these things on the front line, so
absolutely.
to speak, when you talk to educators.
And a lot of the anecdotes are really frightening and discouraging.
Yeah. So let's bring up Act 46 now, which you've alluded to a couple of times, and certainly something that you've been involved in with your role on the school board. I find it interesting you're running for the Senate, which is really where that originated from. It surprised me actually when I had a conversation with David Zuckerman when he came in here for the primary race for lieutenant governor, how he felt great ownership over authoring this and really feels it's a good move forward for the state. Other communities up there, especially in the northwest part of the state, are adopting the Act 46 measures pretty quickly here versus our part of the state. that to me leads me to think that going up there and trying to say this isn't working for us, that's going to be a pretty hard case to make. How are you going to make that case?
Well, Dave is from Chittenden County,
right,
where there are a lot of districts where it's fairly easy for them to merge, and they don't have the kind of unique identity that our towns do, that the towns around here do, and their schools didn't develop as differently and as uniquely as our schools have. So it's a little bit easier match up there. They also don't have the problem with Act 46 is not that equity isn't a good goal, and it's not that efficiency isn't a good goal, and it's not that the property tax isn't too high. All of that is true. The question is, does the model that they put forth as the preferred model fit everywhere? And it doesn't. And if you look, you talked about up there in the north, if you look the entire length of the Connecticut River Valley, there are very few districts that have merged or been able to merge. And it's because of the uniqueness and because of the different offerings. And to try and fit into that model means giving up way too much.
So why haven't these study committees given you enough autonomy to find out a way that it works for you to find these efficiencies? I mean, well, I thought that was part of the framework of it.
No, finding the efficiencies is part of the work of the study committee. And going forward, if they consolidate into a supervisory district, that's the work of the district, to identify them and solve that problem. The difference here is that we don't have really extensive inefficiencies. If you look at the progress monitoring that the particularly elementary schools do with students, everybody's making progress, some more than others, but there's no pattern. Like in the town schools in Brattleboro, some of them are moving really quickly, and some of them are closing the achievement gap really quickly, and some not so quickly, and some less quickly. And then you look around the surrounding towns and you see the same thing. Some are moving really quickly and are really effective, and some aren't. And there's no pattern to the programs or the services that they offer. I don't think there's any question that if every school in the district offered after-school programming for kids, that you would see a growth in performance, that students would learn more. But there aren't, some schools there aren't enough kids to fill those programs to support it, even if the cost was spread over the district. And some of the schools that don't have after-school programming are doing just fine.
Yeah. If you had your way. If you had your way, would you just scrap it?
No.
Start over from
no,
scratch?
I don't think so.
You think it's more of a refinement, a tweak?
I think it needs to be, the first thing that needs to happen is that the pressure to get it all done in order to get the incentives. I mean, one of the reasons that a lot of districts moved really quickly is that there was a 10-cent tax reduction promised and $100,000 transition fees to soften the blow. And the tax incentive is designed to cover the cost of the transition. Like if we did a transition here, we've got 2 fire stations now in West Brattleboro that are built on school property. I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars it would take lawyers to unravel that one between the school and the town. The town just said, yeah, sure, go ahead, no problem. And I'm sure there's something written, but the deed did not transfer. So there are all kinds of costs that are associated with that. But that was a very big incentive. It was very effective, and people hurried to do that work. And hopefully the places that did that, the hurry isn't going to blow up in their faces, that they looked thoroughly enough and were careful enough and it's going to work for them. But for places where you've got some K through 6 schools and some K through 8 schools, and like we have a school that has choice, you can't do the preferred method. If you have schools that are like Dummerston and Putney, who keep the middle schools in their towns, that's not going to last under a consolidated district, because if they have a middle school and we have a middle school here, that's not efficient. All the middle school kids need to be in one place for it to be most efficient. And gradually, I would be amazed if that happened here. I'd be amazed if the consolidated board didn't move those kids. Because if what I'm recommending, what I think is the way to go at this point, is to take the deadline, which now is moved to July of 17. You have to have had a vote and be moving in that direction to qualify for the 8 cents. The 10 cents is gone. To qualify for the 8 and the 6 and the 4 and the 2 going forward. And if that were pushed back a year, so the districts could really take their time and focus on what's the best thing for kids. That's not been, I mean, there are a lot of people that the only motive that they have for doing this is they think it's going to be better for kids. Yeah. And I don't question that at all. I think they really do believe that. I don't see the evidence. I don't really believe it's best for kids, particularly in these surrounding towns, to have the school governance separated from the school. I think it's going to hurt parent involvement. I think it's going to hurt the ability to get budgets passed.
Yeah.
And so if we just pushed it back a year, let people take time to get this sorted out. I mean, some people don't even understand when they form the committee. Like in our committee, we weren't told that we were forming a committee that was called a 706B, and it was a state statute, and that there were all these expectations associated with that. We just said, okay, we looked at, well, the first deadline is the preferred model, so we'll look at the preferred model first, which seems to make sense, but we didn't know that meant we had to go through with that whole process, and nobody could leave, and nobody could join, and nothing could be, well, there were a lot of restrictions based on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's going to be one of the first tweaks when they get back to the legislature on this, is you've got to remove that stick and make it more of a carrot and get back to that 10-say as people get more information and watch it working in other districts getting to that point. I wanted to ask you another education-related question when you're talking about being all about the kids, and we have a very good high school graduation rate here in the state of Vermont. We don't have a good rate of students going on to post-secondary education afterwards. When you look at that sort of disconnect, make the case for me that the way we do public education is the right way to do it. I mean, if the goal is to improve, the state, and the way to do that is to give kids the education they need, which is a college education, are we preparing our kids in K through 12 to do that?
Well, first off, if you live in Brattleboro, if you went to Brattleboro Union High School and went to the Career Center and got the basic skills that you needed to be a machinist, you wouldn't need to go to college. You could get a great job at GS Precision. They're expanding. They're going to be putting on 100 more people. And there are plenty of opportunities for people that don't need a college education or just need additional technical training or need 1 or 2 years of school. There are plenty of other opportunities. The problem with, as I see, with the high school, the legislature made a really serious effort to improve last year. They passed, or 2 years ago, they passed a bill, and this was one of the things that Shumlin pushed that I was pleased about. They passed a bill that financed part of, for the next, I think, 3 years, the tuition costs for high school students to to enroll in college classes and get dual enrollment, get college credit in high school. The purpose of that bill, one of the goals of that bill, was to get lower income kids who otherwise would not ever get onto the college track, onto the college track. The problem is that paying the tuition is not what needs to happen. What needs to happen is that there need to be either more counselors, or the counselors need to be directed to do more counseling of those kids, identify those kids, talk to the teachers, find out who's a really good candidate for taking some of these courses, align courses with some of the jobs that are available around here, or with the interests of the kids, rather than here's a list of things that the colleges offer, so that it actually attracts these kids and gives them a sense that if they can go to take this class, they can take it at the high school, most of them are delivered there, and find out that, wow, I can do college work. Yeah. Then all of a sudden they're looking at a different future than what they're looking at now. And for kids from lower income, they don't, as I said before, they don't have the models for that kind of success, for economic or career success.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously affordability is an issue, but motivation is that issue as well. And I feel like that's something that is missing in the K through 12 level right now. I mean, I'm a product of Brattleboro Union High School, but I had a family that was telling me, you're going to college. That was a given with my mother and father, but not every family is like that.
That's right. And the other thing the legislature did, and again, the dual enrollment's a great idea, but the poor kids aren't taking advantage of it. It's people who the kids are going to go to college anyway, and they're getting some credits before they go off. And that's great. That's money they don't have to spend for college tuition. But it becomes part of the property tax. So it has to be effective. It has to reach the goal, and the goal was one of the important goals was to meet low-income kids, to get low-income kids going in that direction. The other thing is the personalized learning plan, which is such a good idea, to sit down for families and students and school people to sit down and figure out, okay, what kinds of things where do you want to go? We don't have to borrow anybody else's model. We don't have to do it the way the Germans do it, or the Japanese do it, or the Finns do it. We just do it the way families do it, and find out what kids are interested in, what they're good at, what kind of careers are available there, and then have them direct their course of study so that they move in that direction. And again, I don't think it hasn't been, I think the implementation just started a couple of years ago, but I have not heard, and I haven't done a serious look into this, but the information I get just from being around town a lot is that it's not really working very well, or it's not working very extensively, and to try and fit that into all the other things that have to go on in the high school, and I believe it starts in 8th grade. So to fit that into all the other things that schools are required to do it seems very unlikely to be successful.
Yeah.
And again, it's exactly the model. It's a great idea. They didn't come down and talk to people on the front lines, on the ground, who do this work. The same with what I said before about human services, to find out what really is going to work, what they really need to do, or how to implement this so that it'll work instead of just say, here, good luck, put it on the property tax.
Well, David, we are just about out of time here, so
wow, that was quick.
I know. I do want to say good luck to you,
really?
But I also want to give you a chance to address the viewers at home.
Yeah. Well, I think probably the one thing I'd like people to know is that I have a long history of getting things done. I have a bias toward action. I like to get things done, whether it's a solar array to provide electricity and save money for the school budget, or a bigger solar array at the Waste Management District to save money for all the towns in the county, or whether it's any number of projects I've worked on over time. And if you go to my website, Dave4, and I spell it out rather than use number, Dave4VermontSenate.com, you can see testimonials from people who've worked with me over the years, particularly on energy, but a lot of other activities as well. And so I get things done. I'm not afraid of working. I'm not afraid of putting forth unique ideas or new ideas that maybe hadn't been considered before. And the other thing is that I'm responsive. I'll be back. I won't just talk to you now to get your vote and then never show up again. I'll be at the meetings. I'll continue to go to the Hunger Council meetings. I'll continue to go to the West Brattleboro Association meetings. I'll continue to show up and respond to people's letters and emails and phone calls. And you'll have a representative. I will come and listen to you and talk to you, and I will push for legislature to include the people on the ground that are delivering the services, and following some of the examples that Windham County has generated in terms of how to handle these problems that face the state. The legislature can't do it by themselves, and they certainly can't do it if they only listen to each other in Montpelier. So I will be a representative for Windham County, and I'll be a representative for the whole county.
David, appreciate you answering my call and joining me here in the studio today. Thank you. And thank you to the viewers at home for watching Meet the Candidates on Brattleboro Community Television. Want to let you know that you can watch this episode on demand on the website, brattleboro.tv.org. That's also where you can see listings as to when it will air again on the cable channels. And also remember that Election Day is November 8th, but you can vote early. Go to your town clerk's office and get a ballot. Thank you very much.